Everybody had a good time in medical training as usual, I'm sure. Those of us that's done that a while, they've not changed things a whole lot. They've changed some things, so we always good to find that information. And I'm glad to hear that the medications are easier. That's a good thing for us, especially bus drivers. You know, that we're getting some easier administration on some of those medications. So this is to fulfill a requirement for you as an employee of Laurel County Board of Education employee to talk about three things I'm going to be talking about this morning: harassment, discrimination, of course, bullying, and hazing, and we're going to talk about child abuse and duty to report. So there's quite a bit of stuff here, so I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can. I'm going to just talk about what we're required to talk about and go through pretty much slide by slide. Dave, if you want to go ahead and advance it, go ahead. So I want to read to you the definition of harassment and discrimination. You know, everybody knows exactly what this is, but I want to read the definition to you, the state definition. Harassment or discrimination of employees is unlawful behavior based on the race, color, national origin, age, religion, sex, including sexual orientation, or gender identity, genetic information, disability, or limitations related to pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions of an employee involving intimidation by threats or actual physical violence, the creation by whatever means of a climate of hostility or intimidation, or the use of language, conduct, or symbols in such manner as to be commonly understood to convey hatred or prejudice. So that's strictly from. Basically, we're not just talking about, a lot of times, we'll talk about the other part of it here, but harassment is basically creating an atmosphere for someone that's hostile or uncomfortable, or that might be prejudiced in any way. Go to the next slide if you would. Thank you. You're there for the prohibition. Harassment or discrimination is prohibited at all times on school property and off school grounds during school-sponsored activities. This prohibition also applies to visitors to the school who may come into contact with employees and students. Acts of harassment or discrimination based on sex may be committed by persons of the same or opposite sex. District staff shall provide for prompt and equitable resolution of complaints concerning harassment or discrimination. So this is basically where it's prohibited, when it's prohibited, and that there will be a resolution provided if there is a report of harassment. Go to the next one if you would. There you go. Depending on the circumstances and facts of the situation within the definition of harassment and discrimination contained in this policy, examples of conduct and or actions that could be considered a violation of this policy include, but are not limited to, nicknames, slurs, stories, jokes, written materials, pictures that allude, vulgar, or profane, and relate to any of the protected categories listed in the definition of harassment and discrimination contained in this policy. Unwanted touching, sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and spreading sexual rumors, instances involving sexual violence. So we all know what that is. In this modern society that we live in, we understand that very, very well. And I don't think I need to go into great detail about any of that, but we need to be very careful about what we say, how we say it, the jokes we make, things that are said. And I'll just say this, after being a pastor for 25 years and being involved in ministry, you never know who you're going to offend by a joke or anything else. So be careful when you are joking or you're doing anything that would be considered any kind of harassment or discrimination in any kind of way, whatever. So, number 4 on prohibited conduct continues. Causing an employee to believe that he or she must submit to unwelcome sexual conduct in order to maintain employment, or that a personal decision will be based on whether or not the employee submits to unwelcome sexual conduct. Implied or overt threats means open threats of physical violence or acts of aggression or assault based on any of the protected categories. Seeking to involve individuals with disabilities in antisocial, dangerous, or criminal activity where they, because of disability, are unable to comprehend fully or consent to the activity. And number 7, destroying or damaging an individual's property based on any of the protected categories. Okay? Go to disciplinary action. Employees who engage in harassment or discrimination of another employee or student on the basis of any areas mentioned above shall be subject to disciplinary action, including but not limited to termination of employment. So let's go on to number 7, what to do. Employees who believe they or other employees, students, or visitors are being or have been subject to harassment or discrimination shall, as soon as reasonably practical, report it to your supervisor, director, or superintendent. Complaints of harassment, discrimination, whether verbal or written, shall lead to a documented investigation of a written report. So if you believe that you are being subject to harassment or discrimination of any kind, you're supposed to make a report to your supervisor, the director, or you can make a report to the superintendent. And that will put in motion a process that includes an investigation. Okay, so you just need to know that. But you should report those things. If those things are happening, or if you experience that, or there is any kind of those things that are going on that are not appropriate or, uncomfortable or hostile. So what's going to happen after that? We talked about the investigation. What's next? The superintendent shall provide the following: an investigation of allegations of harassment, discrimination to commence as soon as circumstances allow, but no later than 3 working days of the receipt of the original complaint, regardless of the manner in which the complaint is communicated to a district administrator. A process to identify, number 2, a process to identify and implement within 5 working days of the submission of the written investigative report, methods to correct and prevent reoccurrence of the harassment and discrimination. Excuse me. So basically, the investigation will be made after the complaint has been made to find the veracity of it, the truth of it. Then after that, there will be a plan put in place, depending on what kind of circumstances are involved, and there will be a process process to identify and implement within 5 working days of the submission of the written investigative report. So after it's been investigated, there will be a process put in place, and so the gist of this is that you need to know that the superintendent will lead this and that you will be protected going forward. So let's go to the next one. What's next? Continue. The superintendent shall provide for the following: investigation of allegations of harassment or discrimination to commence as soon as the circumstances allow. Did I just read that? I think I just copied that twice. Is that right? Identify within 5. I just read that. So we'll skip that. Huh? Number 3. Okay, there we go. A process to be developed and implemented to communicate requirements of this policy to all staff, annual training explaining prohibited behaviors and the necessity for prompt reporting of all alleged harassment or discrimination. So basically, this is an outline of the process in case there is discrimination or harassment, sexual or otherwise. Harassment is not only limited to sexual nature, but it's all other kinds as well, using slurs or those other things that is mentioned there. Now, this is a website here where the KSBA, the Kentucky School Board Association, posts the policies for every district in the state of Kentucky. You can go to that website there. You can navigate. Rob's going to show you a picture of this later of what the website actually looks like. But you can actually go to that website. All of the board policies, not just this one, are available to you as an employee, where you can go and read the board policies as stated, and I just quoted several of those things for you. So that is what we're required to do as far as harassment and discrimination as far as the district. So basically, we're used to, as bus drivers and employees of transportation, to report. That's what we do. And so if this is happening to you, which I don't know of any instances that it is, but if it is happening to you and it becomes severe, you want to make sure that you report that to the director, your immediate supervisor, or the superintendent, and the process will begin, okay? Let's go on to the next one. I'm going to talk about bullying and hazing, and this is an important one for us as bus drivers are concerned. So this is School Board Policy 9.422 is the policy, the School Board Policy on bullying and hazing. In order to effectively participate in the democratic process as adults, students must learn to respect the rights of others and to interact with them in a civil manner. Therefore, the students are required to speak and behave in a civil manner towards students and staff and visitors to the schools. So this comes up in the write-ups often when there's disrespectful behavior, when there's vulgar language, when students are not doing what they should be doing. We want to make sure that they are doing those things, and that will help them to participate in function in society, if you will, in the democratic process as it says here. But here's some actions that are not tolerated as far as bullying and hazing goes. The use of lewd, profane, or vulgar language is prohibited. In addition, students shall not engage in behaviors such as hazing, bullying, menacing, taunting, intimidating, verbal or physical abuse of others, or other threatening behavior. You know what hazing is. You understand what that is. That is a group of practices, if you will, that a certain group of individuals have developed to become part of the group. Like, you talk about hazing in college to be part of sororities and fraternities, and of course they've cracked down on that desperately, but it does happen in schools too. We used to call it getting a swirly. But anyway, that's what it does. That's part of our hazing process, but it is gone now. But anyway, we need to understand that these are actions that are not tolerated in any way, form, or fashion. Let's read the definition of actually what bullying is, because there is a little bit of misconception about what bullying is. Let me read it, and then we'll talk about this real quickly. Bullying means any unwanted verbal, physical, or social behavior among students that involves a real or perceived power. Okay, that's important to understand. It's behavior that among students that involves a perceived. It doesn't have to be a real power, but it's a perceived power, imbalance, and is repeated or has the potential to be repeated. That occurs on school premises, on school-sponsored transportation, or at a school event, or that disrupts the educational process. Okay. This definition shall not be interpreted to prohibit civil exchange of opinions or debate or cultural practices protected under the state or federal constitution when the opinion expressed does not otherwise materially or substantially disrupt the educational process. So bullying is unwanted behavior, real or perceived. It's an imbalance of power and has the potential to be repeated. So in other words, bullying is behavior where students are talking down to other students, that they're any kind of behavior, physical or otherwise verbal, making that student feel uncomfortable and exercising power over that student in a repeated fashion, if you will. One time does not constitute, although it could be bullying, it could be classified as part of bullying activity. Bullying is something that is kind of ongoing and repeated, okay? And we need to watch with students on our buses. And again, I will refer back to the seating chart, and I will refer back to our student management and seating on our buses. This becomes extremely important. If you suspect or you think a student is being bullied on your bus, if you look at them and they just don't look right, if it doesn't feel right, if things are being said, please, by all means, move that student who you believe who possibly could be being bullied, or in any way, move them away from the other student, get them out of that situation. Pay attention to what's going on your bus. All you got to do is listen sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't take you getting involved like down deep. All you got to do is listen sometimes, and you can hear the things being said and the things going on. Other students may be talking about it, so just watch for that. Go to the next one, student. There we go, already there. As provided in the District Code of Acceptable Behavior and Discipline, students that believe they are victims of bullying and hazing shall be provided with a process to enable them to report such incidents to district personnel for appropriate action. Students who believe they have been a victim of bullying or who have observed other students being bullied shall, as soon as reasonably practical, report it to a teacher, principal, bus driver, etc. So that can be a lunchroom monitor, that can be a custodian, that can be a bus driver, teacher, principal, administrator of any kind. That should be reported, and we need to encourage our students to report those things if they believe it is happening. You know, there's never anything wrong with reporting something to be safe, okay? For us, for them, for anybody. I mean, if you think it's happening, there's a suspicion of it, you may want to go ahead and do that. What's the action that's surrounding that? What happens? Employees are expected to take reasonable and prudent action in situations involving student welfare and safety, including following district policy requirements for intervening, this is going to take a while, and reporting to the principal or to the immediate supervisor those situations that threaten, harass, and endanger the safety of students, other staff members, or visitors to the school or district. So such circumstances shall include, not limited to, bullying, hazing of students, harassment, discrimination of staff, student or visitors of any party. So we are expected as employees to take action, to report these things, to talk about them with our supervisors and report them immediately. We shouldn't wait, we shouldn't think about it maybe. If you think it's happening, go ahead and report it. You are doing what you're supposed to do as an employee. So we take these things very seriously. One of the main causes of suicide actually is bullying, and we know that as, you know, for a fact. So we need to understand the importance of reporting these things, getting these students help as quickly as we possibly can. And even if you're not sure, and even if it didn't happen, it really don't matter. We're going to investigate it. Those students who would tend to bully are going to know that we're watching them, that they don't have the freedom to do that. It's not accepted on our buses. It's not accepted anywhere in any way, form, or fashion. And that, you know, we firmly stand against that and we'll take action, okay? The other part that don't affect us as much is called cyberbullying, if you want to go to that. And it's on the Student Code of Conduct, page 62, is where all of this comes from. And I probably won't read a lot about this because this is something that happens online, but it's something that goes sometimes hand in hand with bullying of other kinds. My son actually was a victim of cyberbullying when he was here at South High. And there was another student that got on the Facebook page, did a whole bunch of lewd drawings on a picture of my son, went through the whole process. The bullying inside the school was going on as well, not just the cyber part of it, the electronic part of it, but it was also the physical, the verbal, and everything else that was going on, and that situation was handled. But cyberbullying includes conduct that is based on, but not limited to, a student's actual or perceived race, color, national origin, gender, religion, disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity, distinguishing physical or personal characteristics, socio-economic status, or association with any person as identified above. The electronic communications means through any kind of electronic device, computers, telephones, mobile phones, pagers, which they're long. I mean, I don't see cyberbullying happening on pagers, but I guess if somebody had one, it could. I don't know. They're long gone. Any type of communication, including but not limited to emails, instant messages, text messages, picture messages, websites, TikTok, Instagram, you know, all the stuff that's going on, you know, with our students that can be involved in any of that. What jurisdiction does the school have? Where do we fit in on that? No student shall be subjected to cyberbullying by an electronic communication that bears the image or the identity of the school, regardless of whether such electronic communications originated on or off the school's campus. So the jurisdiction of the school is within whatever, if it's school email, if it's school computer, if it has anything stamped with Laurel County Public Schools on it, that falls under our jurisdiction. So just so that you know that. We also know that what's that last line there? Let me read that. Hang on just a second. So, the school shall have jurisdiction to prohibit cyberbullying that originates on the school's campus if the electronic communication was made using the school's technological resources or the electronic communication was made on the school's campus using the student's own personal technological resources, okay? So parents shall be notified if their students involved in an investigation concerning cyberbullying. School officials may seize and search a student's personal electronic device. Cell phones, computers, under specified circumstances is when that occurs. Any evidence of cyberbullying discovered during the investigation should be preserved. Such actions may include, but are not limited to, saving the victim's cell phone, text, or email messages, and printing or copying posts of other electronic communications available on websites before removing them. This was our case. I took pictures of the Facebook post that was made. I took a picture of it on my phone, used it as evidence, and progressed that situation right down the road. And this needs to be taken very, very seriously because, again, not only bullying in an in-person fashion with any kind of physical contact, verbal or otherwise, but also this cyberbullying has come to be very big too as well. As you know, there have been students, kids, who have been cyberbullied who have also committed suicide, and they may not have even been bullied as much in person. So it is a big deal. Action's not tolerated. I think that might be part of this. The use of lewd, profane, or vulgar language. Let me see, wrong here. Never mind, sorry, wrong page. So the last page, go to the next one, Dave, if you would. This is the disciplinary action for bullying and hazing, including cyberbullying. It can be, your first offense can be, conference to expulsion. Second offense, in-school suspension to expulsion. Third offense, out-of-school suspension or expulsion. And this is part of the discipline code of conduct that you have concerning bullying or hazing. So what I have seen when it is found to be bullying inside the school, it is taken very, very seriously by our administrators. And I have seen them use a strong hand to deal with it if it does, come to pass that there is evidence of this actually happening. Any questions, real quick, before we move on about bullying, hazing, anything I've talked about so far? I'm not going to hang out here too long, okay? All right. Dave, let's go to the next one. And this next one concerns duty to report, child abuse, and all of those things. And I think you all know this, especially our veteran drivers. Hopefully what we want to do for our new drivers, especially, is have a meeting with you next week at some point in time. Rob and I will get together and we'll schedule a meeting with you to talk about things and get a little deeper if we need to help you understand this process. But if you've been around a while, you've heard these things before. If you're new to this and you have questions and you want to talk about these things, please come see us, me and Rob, the director, whoever's available, and we can discuss these things further with you and how to deal with them in a real-time situation on a bus, okay? But we have a duty to report. Any teacher, school administrator, or other school personnel who knows or has reasonable cause to believe that a child under the age of 18 is dependent, abused, or neglected, or a victim of human trafficking, or is a victim of female genital mutilation shall immediately make a report to a local law enforcement agency or the Kentucky State Police. The Cabinet for Health and Family Services is designed, I'm just butchering that to pieces, sorry. So here we go. Let me try that again. Shall immediately make a report to the local law enforcement agency or the Kentucky State Police, the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, or its designated representative, the Commonwealth's Attorney or the County Attorney, in accordance with KRS 620.030. So that is saying that we have a duty to report if we suspect any kind of child abuse, any of those things that it mentions there, that we are to report these things. Now, let me say this as a bus driver. A lot of things, what we do is observe a lot. We see things a lot. You know that, right? And that's what we do is report. We observe and we report. Digging down into it, doing any kind of investigative process yourself is probably not suggested. okay? You probably could ask questions, some, be careful, and understand that if that information is given to you, it's confidential, that it is, Rob is going to deal with that here just for a minute, that it should be kept close to you, only need to know, and that it should be reported, if you do this. But let the process, pretty much in every circumstance that we deal with as a bus driver, because we have such limited time. We're limited in so many ways. But we are a great place to find out information and find out these things, and then in turn, be a help for this student who needs help, okay? Disciplinary forms, write-ups are a way to open things up sometimes to other issues that student needs help with. If a student is acting out or acting strange or bothering other kids or bullying or all these other things, they don't live on an island, just all by themselves, and everything in their life is connected. And there may be a reason behind the behavior they're exhibiting, and they need help. You may be the only person that opens the door for that help to get to them through a write-up. I know that sounds strange to say, but I promise you, I have seen it happen. Situations probably like this, even with child abuse, where there has been situations, a driver wrote up a student, and there was help gotten to that student. So when that principal pulls that student in and starts to investigate what's going on, they see and understand, what's going on in that student's life. They may hear things they would not have heard otherwise from that student. And it opens up the process for that student to get help. So we're not just trying to be, the disciplinarian here, the authoritarian, trying to get the student to comply and be quiet on the bus. It goes much further than that, really. So, now, after making the report, the